Yo, today is the day. COVID done came and gone. It was all this big thinking and big things were supposed to happen. We don't think that they happen, and we got a big guest that'll be joining us on the other side. Welcome back to another episode, everybody, of the South Star Classroom. That's David, that's Jude, that's Omar. Hope everybody is doing well. And guess what? Today is Omar's day. Omar put together a big show. You know what I'm saying? He wanted to produce something. He been talking about folks and really likes these people a whole lot. But that's coming up a little bit later. I'm gonna throw it out to Omar so he can greet everybody properly. But everybody, before we do, big rounds for our producer today, young Omar, with the blackest hair, with the nicest hair in the business, brother.
The nicest hair in the business. Yo, I thought you were gonna go to a different direction with that. You're like, this man's producing the video, but he's dancing in the videos, he's singing in the videos. You don't want a producer who's not in the videos. You better come to West Coast Death Row.
Well, in lieu of the news around Tupac and his case that's been happening the last few days, it was kind of leering out there, but there's probably a ton of people that have no idea what I'm talking about. But somebody has been arrested for the murder, for, a suspicion of murder for the death of Tupac Shakur. So, but Omar and I are going to always fall off into our hip hop rants. Omar, man, the floor is yours to intro us, and we are at your beck and call now, B.
Yeah, man. We got a great show. We'll introduce our guests from Big Picture Learning. I think that's why Doc Cole is like saying big a lot, because it's going to be a big show with Big Picture Learning. But before we bring in our guests, before we talk about, we were promised jetpacks after COVID, we got to do the check-ins. And I'm a gentleman, so I want to, lend the floor to our radiant and lovely Miss Jubilee Ransom. Jubilee, what's been going on with you this week? How are you?
It's been a wonderful week. Yeah, I can't summarize it right now. All I'll say is that I brought wine to the party. So you'll see.
Damn, that kind of week, huh?
I brought wine to the party. It's cool, happy October. It is Breast Cancer Awareness Month. For those of you tuned in, you may know that I'm a breast cancer survivor. This coming year will make 15 years. And so I encourage people to go out and get checked. A home check or a self-check is what saved my life. And so, yeah, that's it. I'm good. All is well in my world. What's going on with y'all?
15 years. Happy 15-year anniversary.
Yeah, man, that's a big deal.
Make sure you're okay.
15 years.
Thank you.
Oh, fireworks. Where are my fireworks? I answer them damn fireworks. I ain't getting no fireworks.
Update your computer.
Where are my fireworks?
Thank you. All right, Dave. What's up with you?
David, you're next, brother.
All right.
That was your intro. What's going on?
Good to be here. Looking forward to today's topic. Y'all missed a good show last week. Jubilee and I solved all of the ills of the world.
It's all fixed now.
To K-12 math education.
3
takeaways from last week. The kids are not doing well in math. The black and brown kids are doing even worse. And then most importantly, are we even teaching the right kind of math that is useful for real life, practical life, right? Mm-hmm. And that third point might moot the first 2 points, but we'll see. So yeah, that was last week. And let's see what else is going on. I've got some, we kind of dipped into this very brief fall weather pattern where it dipped to like 75 over the last couple of days.
Oh my God.
We started making soup and making bread and now today it's back up to.
Y'all ran out to Panera for some tomato bisque.
But now it's back up to like 85.
How will the people of San Diego ever survive, David?
They're buying blankets. There was it was a run on blankets and firewood.
Apocalypse.
and now it's like beach weather again. So
Firewood.
yeah,
Firewood. Y'all running out of burrito coverings and French fry toppings.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
But I'm looking forward to this topic today. I've got some informal and formal connections to this organization that we're going to be collaborating with today. So I look forward to the topic and big ideas around education.
Yeah, I love it. Doc, brother, where are you at, man? You in Arizona?
I'm in a you don't say the location where I'm at, so I'm out the location. That's it.
Well, what people
That's
hunting?
a talk.
What do you mean?
You're gonna have
What do you mean? Like, what are you, the queen? Like,
Come on, bro.
What location?
Come on, bro.
Arizona's a big ass state too, man.
Brother, you don't disclose the black man's location, brother.
Hosting operation.
You know what I'm saying? My God. I am.
Now he's got to move hotels. You better move hotels.
You know, it's terrible. We're ready. I got a go bag, ready to go, man.
New Mexico.
International man of mystery over here right now, man. Jeez, you a super agent. You should know this stuff. I am on the road right now. It's kind of a road trip. From here, I leave and go to another undisclosed location where I will actually be speaking. But here I'm at a conference. And I'm in my nice little hotel room. I got a fire pit like outside of my room. That's dope. I never seen that before. So that was pretty cool. I think the weather bug is getting me just from going to so many climates and moving in and out. But it ain't COVID. I took did the little COVID thing. But I'm good, man. I'm looking forward to these guests. I am very I'm very aware of Big Picture Learn. I know when I go places and there's like a bunch of education stuff, they throw good parties. Like they tend to have like their own cocktail hour, and it tends everybody, my friend group will be leaving me. I'll be like, where y'all going? Are we going to the Big Picture Learners having the thing? It's like, oh, all right, cool. But I'm happy. I'm happy to be back on with you all, and I'm looking forward to this episode, man. So it's all you, brother.
Yeah.
How are you doing, Omar?
All right, man. October is my favorite month of the year for like a variety of reasons. Like it's most importantly, I think it's the onset of fall, and fall is my favorite season. And like Texas is so hot ass that like even in September, it ain't fall. So October is kind of truly when the weather changes. I'm a weird guy who loves Halloween. So like not so much the trick or treating, but just the kind of like cultural festivity around like enjoying darkness. I got my inner goth in here, man. I love The Cure. I mean, I was talking to Katrina, one of our guests, and she had like no idea who The Cure was. No idea who the like New Order was. And I was like,
Katrina, don't feel bad. I don't know.
I don't know
weird.
either. So I'm with Katrina.
The Cure, man, they just invented goth rock. No big deal, man. Friday, I'm in love, like.
So Jimmy Butler, a fan of The Cure now?
Top selling bands of all time, the worst.
Don't worry, I was in Sunday school most of my life, so I didn't know.
So you can't be listening to the darkness that I've been listening to. Yeah, I like that. So it's good, man. And like my niece's birthday is in October. It happens that my birthday is in October. We got fall break coming up. So, I just been getting my ass kicked by work for the last 2 months, and we have a break coming up. So I'm excited. But before we even do all that break stuff, before we even kick off the beauty and festivities of October, we have a killer group of people with us today. So I want to take our time to kind of transition us into the group of people we're with today. Ladies and gentlemen, we have two guests from Big Picture Learning, two colleagues and friends now who are, I think, exceptional educators in their own right. Yes, they work for Big Picture Learning, but these two have been school leaders. They have done basically everything in the school setting and implementation and above. You're talking about teaching, talking about deans, you're talking about culture, you're talking about discipline, talking about operation, talking about school leaders. Like they are two people that I admire immensely, not only because they're doing exceptional work today, but they are people who know from soup to nuts, from the beginning to end, how to implement these systems because they were in these systems in every single parcel of education. And I just have a deep respect for people who have taught, who have done it. So with us today, we've got Katrina. Hi, Katrina. And we've got Lawrence. He goes by Lo. What's up, Lawrence?
Hey, good to be here.
Welcome. They're both
Is
from
it
an incredible
Lawrence or
organization.
Lauren, brother? Is it Lawrence or Lauren? I want to
Lauren.
get his name right.
Lauren. I
No,
keep
it's
saying
Lauren.
Lawrence by accident. My bad. It's
So
Lauren.
wait, so can we call you,
Loren.
like, our nicknames allowed? Can I call you Lolo, or is that like no?
No, friends and family. That's good. Yeah, Lolo's good. Bring it. Yep, I like it.
But Shorty got low.
Got to get low.
Jesus.
Hey, that's what I mean. See, there you go. I mentioned the Cure, and you're out to lunch. I mentioned Flow Rider, and you're like apple bottom jeans. Yeah, man.
It doesn't take much. Don't get me started. It doesn't take much. You know this.
The whole point of the show is to get it
Omar,
started.
this whole thing is going off the rails, and these people ain't even introduced themselves yet, brother.
What, man? This is not
When
off
Flo
the rails at all.
When Flow
This is the
Rider has
fun that
entered
we
the
have.
chat, brother. Yeah.
Man. Oh, wait. I see you hating on Flo. Well, we've got these two incredible people with us, and they're going to introduce themselves and introduce what big picture learning is. Then we're going to just go straight into the questions of our podcast. So, as always, ladies first, Katrina, would you like to introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about big picture learning?
Absolutely. Hi, everyone. Katrina Martinez. I'm based in Dallas, Texas, born and raised. I'm always representing East Dallas. So excited to be here with everyone. So, as Omar said, I've kind of been through the trenches, and my favorite part of education is being an educator, being in the classroom with the youth and helping develop them and their families. So been in the work for a while, helped founding a charter school system in Dallas, served on the school board for that, but have played many different roles over my career, anywhere from director of curriculum, a director of a school. And my newest position has been with Big Picture Learning. It's been about a year now that I had the opportunity to join the team and really lead the Texas initiative and efforts here. And so I'll talk about what I'm doing in Texas and hand it over to Lo to get us like the nitty gritty of the big picture. But in Texas, I've had the honor to really host spaces and bring together a collaborative group of educators and leaders in the alternative education space. And so really thinking about how our organizations and educational reform could look in places that are serving youth that are furthest from opportunity. And it was already named today, just within these short few minutes, that it's typically always our Black and brown youth. And so that's near and dear to me, being a person of color and having kids of color. So that's what I'm doing. In Texas, we're about a year old, started with 7 schools, now have 14, and we're looking to do big things in Texas.
Welcome.
Thank you.
You're muted, Omar.
Man, I hate when I'm muted. I was saying thank you so much. That was a great introduction, Katrina. Thank you. And always Texas represents. So we got 2 Texans on the show finally. Lauren, we got you coming in from, I believe, the West Coast. Where are you coming to us from, Lo?
Seattle. You're right. Yeah. What Katrina didn't say, if I can brag on Katrina for a bit, Katrina is amazing at creating cultures of trust and love and connecting people and creating collaborative spaces where we can muddle through and wrestle through things and lifting up bright spots. It's amazing to work with Katrina.
Appreciate it.
Awesome.
Appreciate it.
Yeah, I'm Lauren. Low. Get low. I can't introduce myself without saying I've got 3 badass daughters, 10, 6, and 4, Liliana, Rosalie, and Sterling. And they are all in school right now, which is only the 4th time, I think, this school year that they've all been in school together and not sick. So hopefully health comes our way. I started teaching in LA too long ago. I'm getting old. I never wanted to be a teacher, actually. I just knew that I wanted to help people. And my words back then were, undo systems of oppression and help people who needed it the most. My words have changed, but my commitment has not. And after working for a few years in LA and losing too many kids in a lot of different ways, some of which were directly connected to what I believe was broken and harmful in schools, I left and returned to Seattle, went to grad school, helped start Highline Big Picture in 2005, where I stayed for 10 years. And I'm with Big Picture because of the values and what we stand for and what we represent. And maybe that's a good segue into what is Big Picture Learning.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, a lot of different ways to describe it. And I think at its core, we're a value-driven organization, nonprofit, committed to doing whatever the hell we can so that young people can live lives of their own design. And our commitments are around ending racism, anti-racism. Our commitments are around real equity, not just the lip service equity. Commitments around centering student interests, family interests, community interests, so that young people can do real things that matter to them, their families, and the community around them. Say things like education's everyone's business, one student at a time. Those things are true to us as an organization. It's why I don't think I can ever leave Big Picture. And it's why yesterday, Liliana and I filled out an application for her to go to the middle school that I helped found back in 2010.
Nice.
Pleasure to be here. I love the intro too. Ready to kick it off.
Yeah, man, that's a good intro, man.
I mean, the intro to the podcast. It was great.
Oh, right on, man. Yeah. Excellent. So we're excited to have you here. The reason that I think we're excited to have you here is that the objective of this episode, as is every lesson plan, is really to dissect the simplicity of COVID happened. And when COVID happened, it exposed myriad issues within the educational system that I think parents didn't fully grasp or know about until the veil of, say, ignorance, as Rawls would talk about, the famed philosopher, was lifted. And ultimately parents then saw, oh my God, this system is extraordinarily disorganized. It made us question how we do instruction, what instruction is relevant. As Castillo eloquently said, are we teaching even the right kinds of math? Have we done a reevaluation of what's necessary? We had a conversation just this past week about rethinking kind of the 8 principles that we should be teaching children in order for them to be successful, because Lo's done some pretty killer research. I'd love for you to share that today as well. Katrina, we've had these conversations a whole lot about what should be happening. But before we get into the what should be happening, the first question is, COVID happened. What failures did you all see that got exposed, not only to yourselves, but really to our parents, and hearing our community and what they really identified as central issues that they wanted to be solved? So as always, ladies first, I kick it off. Katrina, you talk to parents, in your conversations with parents and personally, what did you think were the failures that got exposed as a result of COVID?
Yeah, I'm appreciating this question. And when I think about parents that got exposed to it, I'll actually talk about my own parents. She had to become my son's teacher, right, in that moment, and really having this shock of where education is and where it had gone. I think primarily I would name this one size fits all approach that is presented in education in terms of we're going to throw it at students, and then everyone, whoever doesn't get it is actually missing the mark, and then whoever gets it, let's honor them in a sense of by naming them and tagging them gifted and talented. So primarily this one size fits all approach. Thinking about too is just plain and boring curriculum. A lot of repetition, a lot of what we refer to as kill and drill, a lot of opportunities to fill out, a worksheet or to complete a worksheet, and thinking about how irrelevant our educational system has become in our classrooms. Loving the fact that my mom going to pick up my son one day from school, he's throwing the ball on the top of the roof of the house. And he's catching as it's coming down, right? And being a parent, I'm like, what's going on here? And my mom said, I can't sit him in front of that computer any longer. We're doing force and motion, right? And so understanding that education has historically kept us in our seats, kept us doing busy work, applying a one size fits all approach, honoring those who make the good scores and good grades, and then consistently leaving behind those who are not finding the curriculum relevant. And then primarily, the next thing above all else that I would say is blaming the victim stance.
Yeah.
And that's just the one that disgusts me the most, is, students can't because they can't, right? Mm-hmm. It's absolutely completely false. Students don't because the system doesn't.
That's really well put. What are they? Yeah, I think we all have major opinions on this. Lo, looking like you are leading a peace treaty. You look like a spiritual leader, brother. I just want to say, with the necklaces and the positive vibe, I'm like, I would follow this man into a forest and drink Kool-Aid. But before we join Coach, Lo, what would you say about a failures?
I might bring something other than Kool-Aid, but I appreciate that.
You're in step with Jubilee.
It's great going after Katrina. I can say what she said, and it was true what Katrina said. And I would add some anecdotes. I heard one family friend of ours recently say she was shocked by the amount of shaming that happened to young people, and this was in a third grade classroom, right? The amount of shame and the way teachers use shame or guilt to try to control student behavior on screens, right? Another thing I heard too was a family talking about surprised at how much the teachers' needs were the center of instruction, and little things like I need you to do this, but also it was like do this for me or do this or I'll get in trouble or the principal will get down on me. But if I could flip it for 1 second, Omar, can I name a success though too? Is that okay?
Yeah, sorry, I'm always on mute. It's our show, man.
Go ahead,
do whatever you want. Absolutely. Come on.
I think there's a lot of folks I know, and I'm attached to the Big Picture Learning, community. Brother Tor down in California, I heard from his families, right, through online virtual exhibitions and from students that what he facilitated, right, and a lot of times he was just stepping out of the way, was a giant success in COVID and exposed some of the families that were in Tor's advisory to a totally different way of learning that was driven by student interests and passions. Remember this one young woman, I can't remember her name right now, but she said it is through the work, Tor was helping her with this entrepreneurial project. She got over crippling anxiety through that process. And so I think there were some examples of success as well, where learning was personalized and real.
Yep.
Very much so, man. David, man, you are a parent. You saw this thing. Like, what did you feel?
Yeah.
What were you pissed off about?
Oh, a lot. I mean, I also, took over the role of teacher during COVID for my son and his cousins. So I led a pod in our home for, 4 days a week. That became my job. So I got to see, and they were all in the same school district in Oakland, different grades, but I kind of got to see what instruction looked like. I think what pissed me off the most was the general lack of urgency and ability of the big district system to respond to the shift. Granted, nobody knew it was coming, but we did have charter schools that were able to get Chromebooks out and get online instruction happening within 2 weeks. And it literally took our district 3 months to figure it out. And then summer came. Yeah. And then they started, the second school year. And so that was incredibly disappointing. I do think, what it exposed, I think, is a negative and a positive too, is like, you're a parent, you're at home, you get to see what instruction looks like. And for the most part, it was one size fits all. And for the most part, there was no rigor, there was no inquiry, there was no challenge to the learning. And this is like, kids are in 4 different schools in one district in different grade levels across the board. This is what I saw. And I'm like, you're losing half of your audience right here off the bat. But it's also an opportunity because then you get to see it and then you start paying more attention as a parent. You're like, oh, why isn't my kid getting A's and B's or high marks? But their proficiency on these things is not there. And then the last thing quickly is eventually the school systems did respond and figured out how to do some version of online learning. But then now coming out of the pandemic, it seems like we're stuck there. And I'm like, iReady is not instruction. iReady is an assessment. So like, we went from like no technology to like, oh, technology can do our jobs. No, There's still a fundamental role for the human being teacher. Technology can help and enhance, but it cannot replace and it will not replace. So, yeah.
Agreed completely. Jubilee?
You know my list. I got 16,942 things on my list.
Maybe boil it down to your top one, man. Top two. We were talking about top fives last time I was.
I mean, number one is just lack of preparedness, and we didn't have to be. I think that's what was, what we found. We didn't have to be, right? So when I think about the fact that it was 2020, and within the world we have top-notch technology, right? Whether it's in corporate America, for the military, right? And classrooms, some still didn't have smart boards, right? Or still didn't have adequate, places to plug in things, right? That was first and foremost. Like, we didn't make the shift within this technological revolution, I think, when we had the opportunity, the space to explore and figure out how to adequately incorporate that in the classroom flow. So that's always going to be my biggest thing. That we just weren't proactive. And then COVID came, and not only did it knock us, off of our balance there, but then because home became the number one place where this learning was going to happen, it also was shown to be inadequate in many ways as well, right? So yeah, my son cried for so long. One son was cool. He was like, all right, we're going to do it. We're going to do Google Docs. And the other son was like, my friends, my teacher, I haven't seen. And because his school wasn't prepared, even though they had solid curriculum, they hadn't made that technological shift. So when it was time to start doing virtual learning, they didn't. So my son spent about 4 to 6 weeks doing Google Docs with teachers uploading assignments and him reading it, doing it, and emailing it back before they were finally able to get onto virtual learning. And how many other places did this happen across our nation, And then lastly, I'll say just the socioeconomic inequities that became very, 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 strained, right? Like, or obvious and strained. So when we think, do you hear like something like a sound?
A little bit, yeah, but
just, a little bit. It's not too bad.
Okay,
you're good.
Yeah. So I think that for on the outside looking in, and because I was still coaching educators during that time and principals during that time, there was some children that didn't have a place to sit and get on to they didn't have computers, and if they did have a computer, maybe they lived in a studio apartment, and it's like, oh, go to a quiet space. But I have 3 younger siblings under the age of 5. Yeah. What quiet space? And we all share one room. Oh, it's lunchtime. What's in the fridge? I eat breakfast at school. I eat lunch at school. I have snacks at school, and there's nothing in my fridge, right? And then my parent lost their job because they didn't have a job that was union backed and had PTO and all this stuff, this luxury stuff that you get when you get a good paying full-time job. So I think that everything just hit the fan simultaneously, and I don't necessarily think it had to. And those are my top 3.
You're muted, but it's all good. Omar is muted.
Yeah,
Doc. So, Doc, go ahead. I'll chime in, and then I think I
won't take up too much time. I think everybody covered a myriad of things, and I know we want to get back to our guests and their expertise. I'll just say, I think some people learn a lot about themselves, learn a lot about their kids. Some kids did do well in like these different kind of learning environments, and we did a lot of studies during that time where some kids wanted to go back not to what the traditional was, but like a mix where it was a hybrid. Like there were some days I was doing here, and there were some days that I was at the school building. I also think that it exposed that there could just be different ways to do things, right? Like, so what would it look like if I'm a student and I go to this one high school, but there's a specialty high school? Like, oh, the concept of me doing some virtual specialty classes at this other place, almost like a university or like a visiting student or visiting professor, open up some possibilities. I also think that a lot of people got to see how the other side lives and how they got to kind of deal with problems as they come up, right? And so, again, I think people talked a good game during that time. I think that, one of the things that I remember happening, because I live in Chicago, when the union boss was talking about, oh, this is scary and dangerous and this, that, and people scared to leave their homes. And then she forgot her camera was on and she was talking from a resort, right? And I think that
on the beach in Puerto Rico.
Yeah, right. So you know, there was a lot of choice for me and not for thee type of things that was happening, and so you know, again, I y'all have some really good answers, but I don't want to belabor it. But I just you know tried to harp on something that probably didn't come up yet.
And Gavin
Yeah,
Newsom's
absolutely.
kids got to go to school too.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Which, by the way, Gavin Newsom probably is going to be the presidential nominee for the Democratic Party coming up, man.
That's
So
right.
I'll quickly jump this, and then Katrina, when we jump into the next question, like it ain't gonna be like us going round and round. It's gonna be much more conversational. So just jump in as you will. I think the greatest thing that we noticed from parents is like you guys are just super disorganized. Like one teacher's doing like complete Zoom meetings all day long. This teacher's giving handouts. This teacher's doing Google Classroom. There was no like synthesis, and there was no consistency in a classroom to classroom basis. So these kids are scattered and the parents are scattered, and they saw, oh my God, like you guys are super disorganized and these campuses are insanely disorganized. It's why we champion an immense amount of uniformity across grade levels and even across campuses and the systems and the rules and the way we do things, because we want kids doing hard mental work with the academics and not hard mental work to figure out the damn logistics of every little fiefdom classroom doing their own thing. So if these are the failures, like changes were promised, we were promised damn jetpacks. So I want to get into like what changes were promised to parents and saying like, yo, we had this opportunity to fix everything. What were we supposed to fix? And I segue to first our guests here. You guys kick us off.
I mean, I might just be waiting on some promises, but some promises that I know, you know, it's hard for me to see them as really positive promises, I guess, because what I've been hearing since post-COVID in large and small organizations is we are going to close the COVID gap. Mm-hmm. And the way that we are going to close the COVID gap is by having longer school years through these intersessional calendars. It's through having longer school days so that we have butts and seats, right? We're having accelerated instruction, which means before and after and during school tutoring, specifically, shout out to House Bill 4545, right? And so I don't know that I've seen or heard any promising practices aside from closing the COVID gap with longer days, longer school hours, kids in front of computers because they must be engaged if they're in front of a computer. So I don't know. I'm waiting on some positive promises. Maybe I missed something somewhere low.
Yeah, you know, I read recently that homeschool enrollment has increased 30% since COVID.
Yeah, exactly.
And fivefold in Black families compared to pre-COVID. So I'm wondering if a lot of folks are feeling like you, Katrina, were like, nah, I didn't even hear a promise. You know, I heard promises around caring and nurturing and celebrating. And but what I heard in that promise, I heard this from a lot of folks, right? And I get a lot of communication in our district and stuff. I read as you all didn't attend to your kids while they were in COVID. It's like this deficit model. So we're going to like, you know, double down on parenting your kids. And I'm like, how dare anybody assume that about how families treat their babies? You know, like, and that's the way I read it. Like, we're going to, you know, nurture your kids. And they, you know, like, no, you know, like they've been nurtured and they're not delivering on it. It just went straight back to what it was before in just about every traditional school I've been a part of, connected with.
Yeah, I mean, we were promised all the things. Like we were promised, man, we're going to get more organized. These systems are going to be more coherent. We're really going to increase the teacher to student relationship and connection, and then utilize technology as basically a support mechanism, but not as a, you know, instructional methodology. We're going to, you know, make things smaller and more cohesive. We're going to rethink the way we do our schedules. We were told all the things. Look at Doc's pissed off. Doc's like, we were promised all this shit.
No, I actually don't think that. I listen, man. I looking at Oakland, bro. Like it was
pessimistic.
It was it was survival of the fittest, man. It was like people didn't know what was happening, and then when the union stepped in, it got even more murky. It got even more, and then it was like, well, we can't do anything about going back into schools. But then they would say that, but they were making ways for their kids to go to schools and to do those things. I'm actually really quite proud of the black people and the black folks that was like, we on our own. I mean, I firmly believe that, and I tried to make it happen. I mean, we have examples from the Black Panthers to black people were already one of the fastest growing homeschool groups before COVID, and it just sped up during that. So I think what it did was it was a wake up call for a lot of people. Like, oh, like they heard, like David said, they heard and saw how their kids was getting instruction, and they weren't really impressed. They, you know what I'm saying? Like, and it was just, I think it was a real big wake-up call. I also saw that one of our guests said basically that kids were getting passed through because No Child Left Behind doesn't work anymore. Well, one, we've been out of No Child Left Behind for a long time, but two, I don't know if No Child Left Behind had anything to do with kids getting passed. It was more so about test scores and accountability kind of moving forward in order for you to get federal dollars that a school could deny if they didn't want to go through that process. But again, I felt like during that time in America, we love to have somebody to blame. We love to blame and figure out the blaming. And there's a whole industry in blame and diagnosing and talking about the problem without ever having to do anything about the solutions. And once you realize how that industrial complex kind of worked and how it worked against you, I just took my hat off to the people that made stuff happen. Because all those people that was against choice, all those people that were against, oh, my public school this and this, that, and the third. And again, I don't care where you go, where you send your kids. I think that's a very private and personal. And COVID exposed that when people, especially people with money, when their backs are against the wall and their kids' health, safety, and education are at risk, they're going to do whatever the hell they need to do to make sure their kids are okay. So you had elite families with money hiring a teacher that they liked and getting them an apartment and doing their COVID test. And then 6 to 8 or 9 kids were meeting in people's garages. Oh, them people turned into some choice people real quick, right? And so I'm not mad. I just don't think about the promises because I have never thought that the system that is never done well by people that look like me, especially post Brown v. Board, I never thought that they were going to make actual promises and be able to hold them. So, I took it for the wake-up call and the way communities and people came together in different ways. Oh, and by the way, there's still hundreds of kids in Oakland missing where we don't know what happened to them since COVID. As far as
they just disappeared.
Going to school.
Yeah.
They're just gone. They're just disappeared, and nobody's accountable. Like and that's what you need to know what you up against. So when we got people like big picture learning that has tools, that has things that I can put in my toolkit. Not saying that everything they do is going to work for you, but that's what a set of tools is, right? You try different tools on the problem, and then you go to the next one. And I just appreciate organizations like that that's giving people a fighting chance, that got the time and access and privilege to dive deeper into those issues and really think about that stuff, because the common person doesn't have that luxury.
I want to offer something a little different here. So in terms of like the promises, what we heard was this new thing. It was new for a lot of people. It wasn't new for me. I've been running schools for 20 years, and we always had some element of social emotional learning, whether it was through our habits of heart and habits of mind, or an actual or a curriculum that we utilized either at the high school in Oakland I was at, or the Montessori charter K-8 that I was at. And so social emotional learning was always a component along with the academic components of the school. But come COVID, come to return, and you start to hear about social and emotional learning. And obviously it gets caught up in the culture wars. People are thinking it's something that it's really not. However, at the end of the day, what you have is a lot of young people that are returning back into physical spaces that have been isolated in many cases. And you have tensions, and you have a rise of violence in schools, right? Violence is at my kid's school. My kid goes to a large district middle school, 1,500 kids, right? They've done some things differently, but for the most part, there's violence on campus, right? Somebody punched my son in the face last week. And here's the kicker, right? the tools that the schools are utilizing for the most part are the same rudimentary tools, right? If the only tool that you have is a hammer, everything looks like a nail. So not to say that we should open the door for like physical acts on schools, but like, what are the alternatives to suspension, right? And large school systems haven't been able to figure it out. They're like, can we do conflict resolution mediation with some accountability, right? Or do we just go straight to like, you're out of here for 5 days, right? Because we know what that does to young people, right? And so I think that's one of the promises that are things that I heard talked about. And for the most part, in big systems, our school district here included, it's like back to square one. I'm like, you tried this before and it didn't work. And it really doesn't work for particular groups of students.
Yo, I think that's an actually incredible segue, and I want to get our guests back into it. So we've just heard things that parents have been upset about. We've heard the promises that were created, but I think David gave a great segue in saying, like, we have been doing the same old stuff. And I think out of all the organizations that I've worked with, other than the South Star Classroom, who have these conversations a ton, I feel like we're some of the very few people, not only with an idea that the old conventions don't work at all, because I think people are like, keep the old stuff, start like sending detention, suspensions, all that stuff, but they don't have an idea about actual solutions and how to do things differently. So I want to just shift to you all to say, cool, like, given that, what are the systems that you have seen either personally or especially through big picture learning that we can implement now to have significant change in the way that we treat education in this country?
Yeah, I want to implement now, and like depending on what your now is, and I agree the old conventions don't work, but I think a lot of the older conventions do work. The way that people used to learn, if we can bring some more of that back, right? And so I'm talking about, mentorships, right? Apprenticeships, but really it's not the apprenticeship that's the thing that matters. I think it's the connection to somebody who shares interests with you, right? Who maybe comes from a similar background, who maybe looks like you, who maybe is curious about the same thing. So students being out in the community, they already are, but schools facilitating connections to community and bringing community into school. So students can place their interests and curiosities and passions with the world outside of school. There's a lot more there though, but things like advisory, personalized learning plans, getting away from any sort of standardized assessment and more being, about authentic assessment, students exhibiting their work, having families a part of the assessment process. That's all stuff that you can do as a classroom teacher. You can make a decision to bring families into your classroom. You can make a decision to bring community into your classroom. You can help students connect with community outside of school. You can ask students what they're curious about, how they want to feel when they're 30. Those are things that you can do now. Building an internship structure as a school, that takes some time. But we've seen people do that. And it doesn't have to take a whole lot of time either if folks prioritize it.
So there's a lot of talk about like social emotional stuff and like advisories. I'd love, Katrina, you and Lo expand a whole lot on those things to be like, like our audience are badass. They understand education really well, but like they're also not in the grains of education the way we are. So kind of from a layperson's perspective, what does this look like for a parent? And how would you sell a parent on being like, this is what should be going on in our classrooms?
Yeah, absolutely. So the thing that I hear, that I just kind of wrote a note here, the true accountability system that we should be working towards is permission to invest in our communities, right? We should be a school within a community, with the community rather than a school within a community, right? And so the way that we do that is we create these smaller communities within our school. And so we often say at Big Picture Learning, the student is the curriculum because it is student driven, it is interest driven. And the community is in the school. The school is a community, right? And so essentially, we want to have students having relationships in the community around their destined interests. But before we can do that, before we start to push academics, we have to know who our students are. We have to know their interests, and we do that through an opportunity to build relationships. Relationships are the segue to it all. And the way that we do that is, Lauren already kind of talked about our advisory system, but really it allows for a personalization of a school, a classroom, a group, a community, sometimes forging a second families for some, and sometimes forging a first family for others. And when we do that, the advisory system, or the approach that we tend to talk about, is really allowing us to talk about real shit, to humanize ourselves, to connect in ways. We often say the deeper connections come through our grapples and our struggles, not through displaying our successes, right? And so when we really truly understand who we are in community with, we're able to forge forward together. Those relationships then create an opportunity to support one another, to support each other's learning, and for us to truly move away from the prosecution of what students are or aren't doing to the rehabilitation and to the investment in them.
And just for people that are listening or that will listen to this, the advisory in many schools, I mean, it's a class, right? And it looks different. And it's also very frustrating to me because, the concept of the advisory has been around for a long time. Yet you'll walk into the average, middle or high school today, and advisory is like, okay, this is the time to do some of your homework, or, kids are on their phones. And I'm like, advisory really is an opportunity for a small group of students to come together to form a smaller community within a larger school that are together for the most part over the course of 3 years of middle school or 4 years of high school, where you can do, grade level kind of, social skills, college oriented, community building activities, but it's an anchor. Advisory should be designed to be an anchor for students that then have to go and navigate 6 different academic courses or 5 different academic courses, right? And meeting new teachers. But the advisory is the hub, and the advisor is the quarterback for the child. It's a very basic concept, yet, it's surprising that it's just not invested in the way that it needs to be invested in too many of our school systems. And that's how you see young people start to fall through the cracks.
Omar, you muted.
I'm always muted
again.
So that's the thing. Like, what does this advisory do? Why is this kind of a panacea for what we're trying to do? Like, people are sitting here listening and be like, so an advisory is going to save us all after COVID in terms of educational output? Like, what about math? What about reading? So kind of explain to me a little bit, like, what's the big deal with advisory? Why should we care so much about this one thing?
Yeah, just really quickly before I segue over to Lauren, who has an immense amount of expertise in it with a big picture highline. One misconception I think that I would name is advisory isn't a class, right? And so advisory is a family. Advisory is an investment. And I would actually also say advisory is really intentional, and it can be really complex, right? And so I'm gonna let Lauren talk about like the details of that and what it can look like. But we really want to move away from advisory. It's just simple and go ahead and do it and implement it. It's so much more complex than that. And that's one of the things in education. We have one term that describes something that, right, in detail, that like it becomes synonymous to so many other things.
Yeah, I think it's probably essential to before implementing advisory, even if you started implementing advisory, is being really clear about what the purpose is. But in schools where I've asked, students, what is the purpose of advisory? Ask staff, what's the purpose of advisory? And get almost as many responses as people I've asked, right? Everything from, it's study hall, or it's a glorified homeroom, or I don't know. For me, at its most basic form, advisory is a place to hold and be held. It's about exploring and developing interests and identities in a community of people that you care about and that care about you. So advisory to me, like Katrina's saying, it expands beyond the walls of the school, even, the classroom, the walls. It's a place, it's a space, it's a way of thinking. Families are a part of it. You see families in advisories. So to me, once you have that purpose, what a lot of folks are trying to do is look for a curriculum, I think, to fill the time. But when you think of like students and community and families as the curriculum, it's not something you can just buy a textbook for and try to implement. It's done with people.
I would just say though that, one, that definitely wasn't my experience with advisory in our school. It was it's a shorter period. Like, you know what I'm saying? That's where the row session happening. The teacher ain't really tripping. It was what it was. But when you say, student as curriculum, a lot of teachers I had couldn't do curriculum as curriculum. So I think that like some of this higher level thinking, right? Like, and I guess one of my questions and this might come up for you, Omar, so you can definitely skip it if you want. But like for the parents and people that don't work in education that's watching, and they try to leave with some tools and some tips, what should they be taking from Big Picture Learning? Or if they go to y'all's website, or what would you urge interested parents or community members that watch today and wanted to learn more and potentially get tools? What would you and Omar, if I'm overstepping, stop me, you know what I'm saying? But I just want to make sure, because I saw some people in the comments that might have had some questions. But I do like the very positive look at what advisory could be. I'm just telling you, in the school that I went to, that advisory wasn't sniffing that. It wasn't close to that.
No, I don't think you're overstepping. Like, I'd send that right back to Katrina and Loda to take on and answer, please.
Yeah, that's primarily what we see, right? I think all too often, and this is what I'll say before I hit, I appreciate the question about the parent piece. Like, what can they take away from today to say, how can I get my student into a Big Picture Learning School, or my child into a Big Picture Learning School? One of the things that I'll say, though, is something really common that we continue to do to our educators is do everything to them and not with them. We do that to our entire schools, and we do that to our communities. And so before we begin to think about redesigning advisory and what that looks like, we have to have stakeholder voices combined in the mix and really helping drive, right? Identifying the purpose, identifying the vision, goal setting, and doing a cyclical of like evaluation of process, what's working, right? And so first and foremost, let's stop doing things to schools and to the adults that are in our schools, nurturing our youth, and start to include them in the process and invite their voices. Definite shout out to Dr. Cole around, like, that's not what my advisory looked like, right? And teachers can't even do curriculum right now, but aside from like being, paying attention to one student at a time. But I almost say, being an educator, curriculum was crippling for me. It was so crippling for me. It really kept my creativity at a low or non-existent. And had I been able to design around what my students needed or what they were interested in individually, and what might heighten their opportunity and opportunities, like true opportunities to move beyond the school's walls, I would have been able to do so much. But I understand that's a mindset shift. That's an educational system shift. When we think about what Big Picture Learning is doing, we are one student at a time, one school at a time, one community at a time, right? But when we talk about one student at a time, that's essentially our advisory, right? Our advisory is everyone in there coming together, owning each other's interest, and really looking out for each other in the support system. So I'll stop there and pass the baton.
I like this question here. Please define the stakeholders, all of them. Thank you. I mean, I don't know about all of them, but I would start, if I had to list stakeholders in terms of some kind of a hierarchy, I would say students and families first, and communities, and then move from there, right?
Absolutely.
It's a great question.
Phenomenal question. Yes, thank you. One of the joys of my last year with the schools that are in our Texas Collaborative and the Texas Upstream Collaborative with Big Picture Learning is I got to do visioning sessions, hold visioning sessions with youth, hold visioning sessions with all of the teachers in the spaces, and haven't made it out into the community yet, but I'm definitely looking for that. You will see how much blame some adults put on students and how much blame students put on adults, right? But the beautiful thing that comes out of those visioning sessions is alignment for what they want. Alignment of what they would like to see happening in their schools. There's just the avenue of how do we get there, right? And we haven't yet conquered how do we get there together, right? And one of those things is we've got to make time for it. We have to honor it. We need to make space for it. And so when we have schools or districts that are given professional development calendars that are already slated with topics for the entire school year, how are we honoring what our schools need, what our youth are telling us they need, and what the adults in our spaces are telling us they need?
I'm on mute again. Agree. So we're actually at the end of the show. So like on that note, like I was going to bring up the last question, but we're already 55 minutes in, man. So you want to do niche notes really quick, or should we just wrap up with final thoughts here? I think we've gotten into final thoughts. Probably final thoughts. So
yeah, I say final thoughts with 6 people.
The way we wrap up the show is kind of, this was the topic. Everyone just kind of goes around and give final thoughts, and man, that's the show. Like, done deal. So again, attention to our guests, Katrina and Lo. I should model it, so I'll go first, and then you two can go, and then everyone else can jump in. Like, final thoughts is that when COVID came, it demonstrated the impracticalities of what we're doing in public education. When we were going through it, I think educators promised that we were going to revamp the entirety of the system. Now that we're done, what we've seen is that no revamping was really done in a mass scale. Everyone just reverted back to the techniques of old. And what was really astounding about Lo and Katrina coming in and discussing is saying, we've known these strategies have worked for kids well before COVID, during COVID, and after COVID. And it's amazing that they haven't been implemented. And really what they bite into is, if we're not setting up successful relationships with students won't care about school. They don't care about school, how the academics going to happen. If the academics aren't happening, this is why we've got abysmal literacy scores. So I love that the solutions that we've had for years should be the solutions that we implement post-COVID. I just think that's a tragedy that we had this opportunity to fix it after COVID and all this momentum, and most people did nothing. That's my final thought. Katrina, Lo, you're next.
Go for it. Okay, I'll go. Yeah.
We can have logo. Go ahead. There you go. We got you.
I had something to say.
She was like logo, and then she saw her picture. I was like, we can switch it. We got you.
Gotcha.
I think my final thought, this is maybe related to COVID, but I think the whole education system is built on an assumption that we know what young people need. Need today, need tomorrow, need to be who they want to be in their lives. That we know it's built on an assumption we know what families need. And I think those are just false assumptions. If I could pull one thread out of schools, it would be that we know what somebody else needs. We don't. I don't know what my daughters need to be who they want to be in their lives. And no teacher knows better than I do. My daughters are the experts on that.
I mean,
all right, final thoughts from her. Oh, go ahead.
Comes down to what is the purpose of education? What did we get into education for? What are we trying to nurture? What are we trying to build in education? And that should be, we are trying to lift up every single young child that comes in and out of our educational system. And I'm gonna just throw this one out there. That's also talking about our emergent bilingual populations. That's talking about all of our youth that are coming into our country, hoping to be served by our public education systems. And so for me, it's really like, how are we investing in every single young person coming in through our educational system? And when we lose sight of what young people need because we are so concerned with adult preference and adult comfortability, then we're lost. We're lost as a society.
Doc, Jubilee, David, final thoughts?
We got you, Drew. You're muted. Now you're doing the Omar.
Oh, that sounds like a song I should write. Doing the Omar.
Is that like doing the Dougie?
I thank you, Katrina and Lolo. I'm really big when I heard Katrina talking about the whole relationship building piece. Like, you guys know that's my jam. But a few other things came up to me in addition to that. Like, we need the relationships, we need SEL, we need advisory and all those things, and we need some damn high quality teachers. High quality teachers are who got my kids through pre-pandemic, during the pandemic, post-pandemic. And so I really believe in that the building relationship piece. I mean, I live by it. It is a mountain that I will die on. And that gets the babies in the building, that for the most part can even keep them in the building if you got somebody that knows how to teach them. And so when I think about the pandemic, I think like you can't like drive forward and reverse simultaneously. So it's like, I think all of the thinking about trying to close the gap has been to our detriment, right? It's like, to me, the question is, how do we really move forward from this point? And to me, to Lolo's earlier point, I think it's connected to some of the things we used to do, right? We need data. We need to focus on data. We need high quality, at the very least, top tier one instruction. I'm not even talking about intervention. I'm talking about a teacher that knows how to teach to the middle, right? And get at least 85 to 90% of those babies in that classroom, right? Mm-hmm. And we need the building relationships piece, because we need our babies to be seen, to be heard, and to be valued, So those are my final thoughts. And I think that we need the investment to mirror the need. And when I say investment, I think an investment is different than funding, right? To me, an investment is more purposeful, and it's not just throwing money at it. I think throughout the pandemic, we've seen money thrown at different things, and it hasn't solved shit. It hasn't solved a thing, because it's not filled with purpose. It's not the stakeholders' voices are not involved in decision making on how those finances can be used. And so, you write the check, or you wire the funds, but it didn't help anything become better. And so I will always stand on the fact that I believe the thing that will move us forward post-pandemic, focus on data-driven instruction and overall decision-making, strong tier one instruction, some high-quality teachers with some good coaching and PD, and that building relationships, strong school climate and culture piece. Final thoughts.
All right, I guess I'm up. I'm going to keep this very basic, because it has to do with my my own like personal evolution as an educator and as a human being also. So I was the principal, that was the founder and then the longtime principal of a charter high school in East Oakland, California, about 20 years ago. And we were very much like the no excuses model, right, that we've heard about. And over the period of time, we kind of softened up and we changed our ways. But it was very much like, here's what we think these young people need. My second head of school principal job was at a public Montessori K-8 in Oakland, where it was almost flipped on me, where we were working with younger people in a different kind of model that was all about like agency, listening to children, listening to each single child. And then I became a parent. My son was in that school. And so the point being here is like, what we can do in this moment coming out of the pandemic, charter schools, charter management organizations, private schools, district schools, school districts, is, my hope is that we can listen to young people, we can listen to students, and we can authentically listen to families in better ways, because my experience is not, as a parent now, I have not lived that experience. And I think it's not an easy thing to do, but there are good models for that. And I think people just need to be open to it, because unless we're actually listening to young people and listening to families in terms of what they need, we're going to continue to make the mistakes of the past and continue to like replicate the system that's essentially like 100 years old. It's like one size fits all model. So kudos to Big Picture and the work that you're all doing. I'm familiar with your work. I've got some connections to the organization. And hopefully next year we'll be applying, and maybe my son will end up at a Big Picture associated high school here in San Diego.
That's what's up, man. That's what's up. I want to start by, again, thanking our guests. Y'all are welcome to come kick it with us anytime. You don't have to wait for us to invite.
Doc Freeze?
Oh, did I get kicked out? See?
The computer got him, man. The union's got him. The union's got him.
Nah, can y'all hear me now?
Illuminati, baby.
Yes, we can hear you.
I'm gonna tell you why the computer messed up, because I'm about to say something I never thought I would say, and y'all better relish in this moment. I 1000% agree with everything that Jubilee just said.
Damn, you gotta give that much of a disclaimer. Shit,
my computer was like, "Kid, what are you doing?" But I would just say this, and I'll speak to the parents listening, man. Listen, man. If you black, you brown, you poor, right? Even if you white and you poor. I lived in Kentucky. I know, like, I've seen it. The emperor has no clothes, man. And I am okay. And with like, I think everybody's trying to figure it out. I think even when we put stuff on the big board, whether we compare traditional schools and charters or whatever, even when one of them is doing better, it's at like 25% to 27 or 28% like proficiency, and that's actually me being nice. This is what I would say just from listening. I'm so grateful for Big Picture Learning and what they're doing. And when you get people bought in, I think plans like that could work. I am nervous, not for you, not for them all, but just in general with people hearing this without that context of who they are and the safeguards of quality that they have in place. Don't start doing no damn experiment when we can't just teach 2 + 2 = 4, right? It's like that should be in addition to quality education that's happening, quality instruction. And I think that in poor neighborhoods, we do a lot of experimenting on kids. We do a lot of like, let's try this. Well, let's get us the good old gang try. And let me tell you something else. And Jubilee alluded to this, but I'm gonna say it in a different way. There was a ton of money. There was so much money that flew through in COVID.
Yeah.
And that shit went to keep lights on, to pad teachers' pockets, to pad school pockets, to pad, people that run schools, and families was out here struggling, and it was jacked up. That's when we started the People's Literacy Fund. Well, we took $100,000, my little small org with less than 300,000 as a full budget at the time, and we just built mini grants for people in the community that was working on literacy. And this, let me tell you, them grandmamas that I gave $4,000 to was making more impacts than teachers that was complaining about the situation that was happening. And I'll just say this, man, I was a social worker. And I remember one time I went to a place we had to take a little girl. And you could see it on my face, right? It was like rat infested. It was a bad situation, drugs. And when I got out, my master social worker was like, "So how was that for you?" And I started saying something, and she stopped me and was like, "Look, in this moment, we the professionals, we the paramedics. What that means is when a paramedic comes on the scene and a kid got shot, the kid is screaming in pain. The mom is screaming in pain. The community people is coming outside and screaming in pain. When you come in the ambulance, though, as the paramedic, you can't get out the car and start screaming. We'll take care of you later, but we need somebody to be a professional in this moment." And what COVID showed was that we had a lack of professionalism around people that were tasked to take care of us and handle certain situations. Of course, it was a bad situation for a lot of people. And guess what? COVID was a larger thing that happened to a lot of people, but that microcosm happens to people all the time. And they got to see how the other side lives. So I'm just so grateful for Big Picture Learning and people like that. But to parents out there, my final thought for you is you are on the hook for what happens to your kid. It's not fair. It's not right. It ain't none of that other stuff. But but you the only one that got to live with the consequences. Everybody that's talking, and myself included, we got degrees, we are hireable, we are upperly mobile. We're going to be okay. You know what I'm saying? You got to live with that stuff. And so you need to be paying attention and not falling for promises that any system makes you that ain't never serves you well.
You make me.
Period.
Yo. All right, man. That was deep.
I agreed with Jubilee. I feel like that's going to come back and bite me like in later shows. She's gonna be like, "Remember that show in October?"
Yes, I'm gonna make a loop. I'm probably gonna do some like really dope trap beats to go behind it.
And
It's
then
gonna
we're
be
gonna
lit.
say it's a
It's gonna be
deep fake.
good.
Go ahead, Omar. Deep
Yo.
fake.
What the hell just happened? I'm gonna
You're finally not on mute. So
Yeah,
this
you're
is
not
good.
muted. Yeah, you.
when I
You're
get the
good.
call. Exactly. Yo, I that was an incredible show. I want to give a huge thanks to Lauren from Big Picture Learning, Lolo, from Katrina from Big Picture Learning. Thank you so much for joining us, man. On behalf of Dr. Charles Cole, David Castillo, Jubilee Ransom, our guest. This has been the South Star Classroom coming at you every Tuesday, 3 p.m. Pacific, 6 p.m. Eastern Time. Check us out on YouTube, Roku, and now Spotify. Y'all have an amazing week. Peace.